Hi there, Phil Pendlebury here, and I hope you're having a super mega large day. And for viewers from the Middle East, Assalamu alaikum, mahaba. So today I'd like to talk about Nuendo 11. I've picked 5 of my favourite general workflow features from Nuendo 11 that I think you might find useful. Nuendo from Steinberg is a super versatile post-production solution and can be used for composing, sound design, game audio, surround mixing, mastering, and many other unique creative purposes. It's packed full of useful workflow features which are designed to work amazingly well for beginners and hardened professionals. So what I'd like to do today is introduce you to Nuendo and give you a rundown of my 5 favourite and most useful basic features of the application. So let's load up Nuendo and get going. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to talk about is Workspaces. I'll read you a little bit from the Steinberg website and then we'll go into it in more detail. Workspaces organise your windows and specific dialogues for frequently used workflows. Multiple workspaces can be defined, each saving the size, position, and layout or settings of important windows and dialogues, such as the project window, mix console, or transport panel. You can switch between different working modes quickly via the Workspaces menu, or as I like to do, using key commands. So let's have a closer look. Alright, so here we are in Nuendo 11, and I've got a reasonable sized project set up. Now just watch this. I'm not going to touch anything other than a couple of keys. Yes, indeed. So how do I do that? It's all down to Workspaces, which are controlled from the Workspace menu up here. You might find, like I do, I work on a single 4K display, which is quite large, and having the project showing over the entire display, even if you bring up the mixers separately, can be sometimes a little bit awkward to work with. So I've got a few workspaces defined in advance. And the basic principle is this: you set up the screen how you like it. So I'm going to put the window here. I'm going to bring up the mixer. Let's get that out of the way. And we'll move the mixer down to the bottom. Let's open up a MIDI part and we'll put the MIDI editor over on the right hand side. So yeah, that could be quite handy for editing MIDI while still looking at the mixer and while still seeing the project. So we'll then go to the Workspace menu, add Workspace. There's Global or Project. Global means that your workspace will be available in any project, and Project, as it says, means that your workspace will only be available in this particular project. So we'll give this a name. We'll call it MIDI Edit. Okay, so we've now saved that workspace. So how do we recall it? Well, at the moment, it's hidden because there's only a certain amount that are actually visible on this menu. But what we do is we go to the Organize Workspace dialog, and if you scroll down, you'll see that the one I've just created is at the bottom of the list. We can move it up until it's visible on the menu. So I've moved it right up there, second one in the list. And now we can view it here. And very simple. Let's go back to full screen. And then MIDI edit. There you are. So the beauty of this is it's very, very quick to bring back the screen layouts that you've made. Also, setting a key command, which is like I have done here, makes it much, much quicker. So without even using the menu, Alt-1 takes me to the full screen. Alt-2 now brings me to the second workspace that is in that list. So let me just put that back how it was. I can move MIDI edit down underneath my others, and then we'll set a new key command for that. So how do we do that? We just literally click the space where it says Key Commands. And there it is, Workspace 7. If I now want to assign, let's say, Alt number 7, and that's it, done. So now we can easily bring back any of those workspaces by just pressing the keys. Alt 7, there we are. So there you go. That's Workspaces. Extremely powerful. Take you a few minutes to set up. Once you've set them up, you will find them extremely useful. And of course, I'm on a big 4K display here, but some of you guys will be using more than one display. So you can set your windows wherever you like and bring them back. It saves you a lot of messing around while you're working. So that's Workspaces. All right, let's move on to track visibility management. Have a complete overview of all tracks in your project by dynamically displaying only the tracks that you actually want to see. It's really useful. Various viewing agents can help you by instantly bringing the right tracks into focus, meaning you can maintain a full overview of your project at all times. You can show and hide individual tracks and determine the position of certain channels in the lower mix console. Okay, so track visibility. Well, once again, the reason I picked this as one of my favorites is because it's a nice way to organize and declutter your screen. I've got a project open here, the same one that we were looking at earlier, and it's actually not too bad as it is. But bearing in mind that this is on a big 4K display, and as we were talking about earlier on, the workspaces that I use, for instance, like this, tend to kind of help. But let's go back to the full screen and let me show you how track visibility works. There's a menu here that gives us the ability to filter different track types, which is great and very simple. We can get rid of certain tracks types that we don't want to see on the screen. So at the moment we're just looking at audio. We get rid of that, we see nothing. And there we see instrument tracks only. But normally you'll have that set to all track types. What we have next to it here is the visibility agent. As with everything else, you can set key commands to do this as well, which we'll get to in a minute. So let's try a couple of examples. What I've got here, for example, is actually a music track, but there's some sound design at the beginning. Let's say I only want to look at that particular area, and I don't want the rest of these tracks all cluttering up my screen. What I can do here is use one of the track visibility agents to say only show the tracks with data where the cursor is. And there we have it. So basically now, wherever I have that cursor, it's only going to show me tracks that have data at that position. So let's reset it back to all, and we'll go through each of the settings. So the first one would be showing all tracks, which is the normal configuration. Showing only selected tracks. All right, so we want to work on the bass and the drums. So we'll select those tracks, and let's work on the band as well. But we don't want to see anything else. So those tracks are now selected. Show only selected tracks. And there you have it. Once again, we'll reset that back. Hide selected tracks will do the complete opposite. So we've hidden those away so they don't get in the way and we can see everything else. Let's go back. Show tracks with data. So let's make a couple of dummy tracks just to show this feature. We'll put them in here, doesn't matter really. MIDI, let's make 5. Hello. And there are our tracks. Now there's nothing on them at the moment. We might use them later, but at the moment we're not going to use them. So again, we go to the track visibility and show tracks with data. So those will now disappear, as you can see, or as you can not see, because they don't have any data on them. Okay, so how about show tracks with data at the cursor position. So I've got my cursor here. Let's put it right there. So this track isn't under the cursor, the data on this, and of course all these particular ones will disappear as well. Let's just check that that works. And there you go. Very similar to show tracks with data, but it will be only at the cursor position. Muted tracks. Well, that speaks for itself, really. Let's say we mute that. I quite often do this if I've recorded a guide vocal like I have here, for example. So actually, let's use that as the example. That's my guide vocal, which is muted. All my guide vocals are in that folder. And there's the artist's actual vocal. Now, when I'm mixing the track, I don't want that to get in the way. So very simply, go to here, hide muted tracks. And my guide vocal has now disappeared, but it hasn't disappeared because it's still there in the project. It's just hidden. Now, taking that a step further, like we did with the workspaces, you can set up key commands to access these very, very quickly. And you can also use them in macros and so on, but that's a little bit more advanced. We'll get to that another time. But let's just quickly show you how to set that up in a key command. So we'll take, for example, show tracks with data at cursor position. If I select that right now, showing you what it does, and then go back to normal, we go to key commands. And let's go to visibility. We can type it in the search here. We can find it here. So we want to use show all channels with data at the cursor position, this one here. So we simply select it. We add a key command. Let's make it Alt-9. Hopefully it's not assigned to anything. And that's done. So now all I have to do, put my cursor wherever I want, press Alt-9, and voila. And while we're at it, you could have also set one to show all tracks, which will bring it back to normal. So there you go. That's the track visibility agent, and another feature that I find extremely useful for productivity and workflow. The track import feature is hugely helpful. Audio, instrument, MIDI, chord, marker, and video tracks can be imported directly from other Nuendo or Cubase projects. And you can import audio, instrument, and MIDI tracks either as new tracks or as new track versions of existing tracks. Really useful to bring in certain things from other projects, whether it be the actual audio or MIDI or just the settings of those tracks. So let's go and have a look at that. So track import is an extremely useful feature. Let's quickly run through how that works. Okay, so for example, let's bring up my mixer. I've got my vocal channel here. And normally what I will do, if I remember, is the particular project that I'm working on, I will go and save a track preset. So all these particular plugins and the EQ and various other things will be saved as a track preset. But there's a few scenarios when that might not be quite enough. For example, you've forgotten to save a track preset and you're in the middle of a project and you suddenly think, oh, I want to bring the vocal channel from that previous song that I've been working on, or I want to bring in a particular instrument setting. Now, the beauty of import tracks is that you can use it to bring in the settings from an entire track, but also the actual information itself. So if we move down at the bottom, let's just close up some of this stuff. File, import, tracks from project. So what we're able to do now is look at a previous project. Let's take this one, for example. And there we have all the tracks that were in that previous project, not the one that we're working on right now. including the markers. So the options here: track data to be imported, events and parts, so that means all the events and parts that are in the track that we're about to choose, channel and inspector settings, automation, etc. We can collapse the list, we can expand the list, and so on. That's pretty self-explanatory. So let's go to the vocal from that particular project. So we select it here. We want it on a new track. But I don't want to actually import the vocal itself. I only want the track which contains all the information. So all I do is deselect this, keep the channel and inspector settings, press OK, and there it is. The track's appeared at the bottom. There's no data on it, but all the information that was on that track previously are ready to be recalled. As another example, let's load up the test project again. So I had a drum track that I was working on in this particular project, and I want the actual drum part because it's similar to the one that I'm working on right now, or I might just want to edit it a little bit. I don't want to put it into the existing tracks, although you can do. You can easily just place it into an existing track. I want a new track that contains the drums from my previous project. These options give you choices of where to place your particular part. So at the moment, I've got my cursor in the middle of the project, so that won't really do much good. I don't want it there. I just want it to go back to where it was originally. And as it says here, events and parts are inserted at their original timecode position, regardless of the start time. Relative, they're inserted at their original position relative to the start time. So let's choose absolute position. We'll use the drums. Let's pick another, let's use a bass as well. And both to new tracks, off we go. Wait a couple of seconds. And there they are at the bottom of the project, ready to be moved into whatever position you like. The nice thing there, of course, is that all the MIDI data is there, as you can see, but also the instrument itself with all the settings, however I had it in that previous project. Super useful and super handy. Import tracks from previous project. So the next thing I'd like to look at is disabling tracks. According to the Steinberg website, system resources can be conserved by disabling audio, instrument, MIDI and sampler tracks that you do not want to play back or process at a given time. Disabling a track zeroes its output volume, shuts down all disk activity and processing for it. This can be really handy, for example, if you want to make a big template and then disable some of the instruments, but still have them routed and all the other settings, and then bring them back into play later on. So I'll show you how I do that now. I'll give you a scenario here. I've got one of my default projects open. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of instruments and things all set and ready to go. Now, if I were to open that project with all those instruments and settings activated, first of all, it'd take quite a long time. And secondly, it would be using a lot of CPU, a lot of memory, etc. So the beauty of being able to disable tracks is it really saves on system resources. But it's not just disabling them, it's enabling them as well. Set it up as a key command, for example. So let's find something that might be useful. I have a key command set up to disable or enable a track. It's a toggle switch. So I've got my drums here. There's nothing on it at the moment and the track's disabled. If I enable that track, press my key command, as you can see, the track becomes active and there is the drums, however I had it set before I disabled it. And not only that, you can also see here that the routing is all set and any inserts and sends that I've set up are also remembered. Hugely useful. So what I have here is a project with pretty much everything I need for basic songwriting. I've got another one for sound design, got another one for movie composing, and so on and so forth. Each project can be opened really, really quickly, and I can just enable what I need. So I've got, for example, Spitfire Epic Strings here. Let's open that up, enable it, and having a quick look, there it is. And it's already routed to my group, however I like it, and any other settings that I made in advance. So what I like to do is set all this stuff up in advance and then disable the tracks and save it as a template. Saving it as a template is quite simple. We just go to Save Template, New Folder if you like, give it a name, and then off you go. That's not really what this was about. This was just about how to disable and enable tracks. And incidentally, if you don't have a key command set up for that, you can just right-click on the track, drop down to Disable Track, and there you go. And of course, the same thing applies to enabling the track. Right-click, drop down, Enable Track, and there it is. Extremely useful and something that I use almost every day. Channel Batch Export. Actually, it's now called Multiple Track Export in the export dialog. Use this option to mix down several channels simultaneously. An individual file is created for each channel, and if you activate a channel type in the list, all channels of this type are selected. And I'll show you how we do that right now. All right, so we're on to number 5, which is Channel Batch Export. This one, again, extremely useful, and I know I keep saying that, but that is why I picked these particular features. So normally when you go to export your project, let's bring up the export audio dialog, you will export your main outputs as a single file. Channel Batch Export enables you to export multiple tracks simultaneously. There used to be a little button up here, and in older versions there still is. But basically there's no need for that now, because as soon as we select multiple, we have the option to choose as many different channels as we like. This can be really useful, for example, if you want to just export all the groups. As you can see here, I've got groups, guitar, drums, percussion, basses, etc. So let's just clear everything off. And if we want to select groups only, we've got a little drop down here, and that's all the groups selected at once. We now press Export Audio, and you will get a separate track for each group, depending on how you've got things set up over here, which is for another tutorial. You can also go into the naming scheme editor and choose how you would like each file to appear. I won't go into that now, but there's ways to get pretty much any result you want. And then we just press Export. Now, aside from that, okay, let's remove that. You can also, of course, select individual channels, and you can also mix them. And once again, if you wanted to only export all your effects channels, we've got a little drop down there. The other feature is to be able to search. So bass, for example, there's all the different bass channels. Let's select that one. Get rid of the search. The other feature that you may find useful is to have this little button here pressed, which will sync the selection to the tracks that you've got selected on the project or on the mixer. So, okay, I just want to export my guitars and drums and percussion. And I've pressed the little button there. So now any tracks that I select on here, as you can see, they're also being replicated here. Once you're ready, Make sure you've got your file format and everything set up how you like it. Export audio, and you will end up with a separate file for each of those tracks. Extremely useful. And finally, a little bonus, job queues. I know I said 5, but this is number 6, and it's kind of related to the previous subject because it's all part of the export dialog. Job queues can queue up to 20 different jobs, comprising stems, e.g. dialogue, foley, atmospheres and music, etc. And everything that can be configured in the export audio mixdown dialog, including different time selections, formats, name and export path in a single list, exporting them separately but all in one operation. So it's basically, as it says, it's queuing up jobs. So let's have a look at that one. Yes, it's a bonus feature, and I thought this really ought to be in here because it's something that's extremely useful and also related to what we were just talking about. So this is the job queue. It's at the bottom of the export dialog, and you expand it open, and there we have a space that we can add separate export jobs. So let's go back to what we were saying earlier on. First thing I want to do is export all my groups. So I'm going to select that. I've already got my locators set to both ends of the project, so we'll leave them where they are, and we'll add to the queue. It shows you all the different things that are going to happen here, as you can see, and it shows you where they're going and what they're going to be called, which is marvelous. All right, so we'll just collapse that list, and let's make another one. Let's go to main outs, and we want to do an MP3 that your client might want to have a quick listen to. So I've got an MP3 preset here. Not that that's relevant, you can set it up however you want. And we'll keep it at the same positions, so it's going to be the entire track, the main outputs, and we'll add that to the queue. And as you can see, there would be the name of the file and the location, MP3. Let's collapse that. So, I don't know, have we got any markers? Yeah, let's say we only want to export the verses here. We'll go to a single export and we'll go to the verse vocals. Doesn't really matter because we're only going to export what is in the verse markers, in between the cycle marker of the verses. So I've got cycle markers here set up for that verse, which is there. I've got the verse vocal selected. I'm going to add that to the queue. And as you can see there, cycle marker, that's the name of the file, and that's the location it's going to end up. And you can create up to 20 of these. Let's do all the BVs. We have to go back here again. Let's do all the BVs, and we'll do those as a 16-bit file. But we'll do it over choruses and all the verses, chorus, and so on, and we add them to the queue. And there they are. Just marvelous. These are the kind of time-saving workflow enhancements that Nuendo has, and it's just amazing. Once we're all ready, we've got all our jobs set up, start the queue export, and off you go. Make a cup of coffee, and when you come back, everything will be done exactly how you wanted it. That's the export queue. The thing is, this was just 5 of my favourite workflow tips. There's loads more things like this, and I hope I'll get a chance to share those with you at some point in the near future. So there we have it. That was my 5 favourite basic workflow features from Nuendo 11, plus a bonus feature as well. I hope it helps you, and I hope you enjoyed watching, and I look forward to seeing you again sometime soon. Cheers for now.